Hey, welcome back to the Sketch on Wheels channel. Thanks for dropping in today. If you do me a favor and you like motorcycle content, please hit that subscribe button and look in the description below for some links for some of your favorite motorcycle gear and some discounts on that. So what are we talking about today? Well, Kawasaki has released a new KLE500. I'm going to consider it a lightweight ADV bike because I go more by displacement than by actual weight. And so this model actually is a nameplate that they had back in 2007. 2007 was the last time they produced it, the KLE500, and this new bike is totally different. So wipe that old bike from your mind. And that old bike transitioned in 2008 to the Versa 650, which we know is not an off-road bike at all. So I'm excited today to kind of go through the new KLE500 and see what it looks like, see what the specs are. I know there's a lot of rumbling on the internet right now about what's bad about this bike and some things everybody would have changed. But you know what? We don't know those things until we get on the bike, until we ride it. Hey, there's going to be some things in this new bike that are disappointing, and every new bike goes through that. I have a 2025 DRZ4S that I'm thinking, what are they thinking when they didn't do some things they should have done? Now, there are going to be some people out there that have found that unicorn bike because it's based on the style of riding that they do. It's in their price range. It does everything. It ticks all the boxes. But for 90% of us, we're still looking. So even though I haven't found the perfect bike, and a lot of you haven't found the perfect bike, we're getting closer, and thankfully Kawasaki has come up to the table and put a bike out there that can at least check some of the boxes. They had nothing prior to this, and guess who's not in the game? Do you see a Suzuki that's out there that's a true lightweight ADV bike? Do you see a Yamaha that's out there that can fit in this class? I don't see those two companies with anything. I'm not sure what Suzuki or Yamaha are thinking. It doesn't take an insider to see that these small ADV bikes are what's selling and what people are demanding. And so why is it? Why are small ADV bikes so popular right now? And I think it's because it's a good entry-level position. There's a lot of new riders that don't want that 700 Tenere. I mean, I don't know if that's the bike for me either, but at least when we've got a smaller ADV bike, people can get on it and ride it, start to experience some off-road with some gravel and some dirt. But another thing these small ADV bikes do, it lets guys like me, guys in their 50s, 60s, and 70s come off those bigger bikes and still extend their riding career. You know, we can ride these bikes a little bit longer into our life than we can when we jump on those bigger bikes. Hey, hats off to Kawasaki for coming into the small ADV market. You know, I appreciate what they're doing, and I really hope that they made a bike that they sell a lot of units and they find their buyer and the buyer finds them. So as we go in and start discussing a little bit about the new KLE500, remember, we don't have all the specifications. We don't know some basic things. We don't even know, as I said, weight or horsepower. But we can look at the bike and kind of get a feel about who it's made for and who it's not made for. And there's going to be some things that are positive and some things that are negative. But I'm going to go into it with an open mind. I'm not going to bash Kawasaki. Anytime there's a new bike out to talk about, I'm happy about it. Would I not want to ride this bike because there's some specification that might not be what I'm looking for? Heck no, I'm going to get on this bike and ride it every chance I get. There's not a bike out there I don't want to ride. So I'm happy and excited about the new Kawasaki. It looks pretty awesome, at least for the aesthetics of it. I like how it looks. And so let's get in a little detail here and discuss it a little bit deeper. Let's start with styling of the new Kawasaki. It's going to come in two models. It's going to have a base model and then it's going to have an SE model. The base model only comes in a metallic carbon gray. The SE model comes in a metallic bluish green, and then also the blizzard white with the classic DNA green on the trellis frame. The difference between the base and the SE is the SE comes with a tall windshield, has a metal reinforced handguards, it's got a little bit larger skid plate, and then it also has that full color TFT display, with the base model just getting the LCD instrumentation. Up front we got two LED low beams, and then we got a center high beam. And when I look at this bike, it's very similar to the Z500, but I have to think that those look like eyes, and I'm not sure if I'm sold on it or not. And if I really kind of look back, I'm thinking that looks like it's wearing an incredible mask. Not so sure about the front end. It'll probably grow on me. We're all different on what we like in a motorcycle and what that look is. Heck, I like the 411 Himalayan, and a lot of people hated that bike and the way it looked. So the overall look of this bike, I can't help but think that it looks somewhat like a Cove 450 Rally. So a rally bike is actually going to be thin and streamlined, and that's what this bike is. It's going to have a tall front windshield, and it's going to be where you can put a lot of your electronics up front, and it looks very similar to what the Cove 450 Rally is. And so I think that's the way they're marketing this bike, even though it's probably performance-wise not anything like the Cove and a true rally bike. But they even have the word rally in their marketing on their webpage. So we got to look at this bike and say, okay, it looks similar to a rally bike in design, but it's not really a rally bike. Another thing when looking at this bike, it just seems off in the rear. The 17-inch wheel just needs to be 18-inch, but I know if you go to an 18-inch wheel, that raises the seat height a little bit, and they want to try to make this an entry-level bike or a bike for anybody to ride, and so it lowers the seat height a little bit having a 17-inch wheel, but it just looks like it needs it. And for those that ride off-road, they're going to look at a 17-inch wheel and go, I'm not so sure about that. But I will say that the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, it's got a 17-inch wheel, and people love that bike. So I might be nitpicking, but I just think it would look better and probably serve a little bit more people that had an 18-inch rear wheel. The body panels, I don't mind those at all. They've got some nice angles to them. They seem streamlined. It seems like it's trying to keep the bike thin. It's got a modern look to it. However, the gas tank, the gas tank just has this big hump on top, and I can't look at that gas tank and think it's too tall. It almost looks like a camel hump. I think they could have done a little bit better on the top of the gas tank, but overall the presentation of the bike, especially that white Blizzard with the Kawasaki green frame, I mean, that looks nice. That bike's really appealing to me. Let's talk a little bit about the engine. Now this engine they say is 500 cc's, and we'll get to that in just a minute, but it's the exact same engine that is in their Ninja 500 and their Z500, and so it's been around for a little bit. It's a parallel twin. I imagine it's going to be a little bit quieter and a little bit smoother than some of the single cylinder engines. But here's my beef. This is not a 500cc engine, it's 451 cc's. So I don't know why companies have to round up so high and kind of mislead you by thinking you're getting a 500cc bike when you're really just getting a 450. And that's what the Himalayan is. It's a 450. 452 cc's, I believe, is what it is, and that's what the Ibex 450 is. I think it's 449 cc's, so why not just stick with 450? I don't quite understand the marketing on this. It kind of feels like we're getting lied to just a little bit. There's no one that's going to look at a 450 in the name and think, I'm not getting it because it's a 450 versus a 500. I just wish they'd be more consistent on the naming. So one of the big things we don't know is we don't know its horsepower or its torque. But if we go by the previous models that have this exact same engine, it's getting around 45 horsepower and around 40 foot-pounds of torque in these other models. Now I know the ECU mapping should probably be a bit different in this bike, but it's right there in the ballpark with the CFMoto, the Himalayan, even the 390 Adventure R from KTM. Now the Himalayan might be 40 instead of 45, but really 5 horsepower isn't going to be a whole lot noticeable. So this is the second model that we've seen an engine come off of the street and onto the Adventure series, and KTM did that with the 390, putting the 390 Duke into their 390 Adventure, and it didn't really work right. And for the first 6 months there's a lot of complaints about that bike. It had no low-end torque, it stalled all the time. Now there is some fixes for that, and they're either out there or they're in the works, and I hear that it's going to improve that bike tremendously. But I don't think we'll have that problem with the KLE500, because the parallel twin that's in the street bikes of Kawasaki is coming into the Adventure bike, and we know a parallel twin is going to be smooth and it's going to be consistent power. And I believe this bike is not going to be off-road nearly as much as the 390 is. I consider this bike a 70-30 bike, so it's going to be on-road 70% of the time, off-road 30% of the time. You know, I bet some of you are going to challenge me on that and think that, you know, this bike can do a little bit more off-road than it can. And with the right riding skills, I'm sure it can. But I bet there's going to be a lot of people that don't even take this bike off-road. It's going to be a commuter bike. They might do a little gravel or a little dirt, and that's fine. That's great. And that's what this bike is built for. So I think that this engine is going to work really well with this setup for Kawasaki. This new Kawasaki has their assist and slipper clutch system. I don't know the details of it, what it does, how it works, but I know a lot of companies are starting to use things like this. My DRZ4S has it, and it's a smooth ride. So what they're telling you it's going to do is when you're downshifting, you know, in the older bikes where you downshift and it would really drastically stop you and slow you down, so it's not going to be as jerky. And as far as the clutch goes, they say it makes for a light clutch, and I can tell you, at least for the Suzuki, it is a smooth clutch. So anything that they do to make it easier to ride, make it easier for new adventure riders to get on the bike and learn is a good thing. So technology, for the most part, is a good thing. So the frame is a bit of concern for some people. It's a steel trellis frame and it's a one-piece, and I think it looks super under there, especially in that Kawasaki green. But I've heard that if you have a hard crash and you end up bending this frame, then your bike is gone and you have a salvage bike. So I don't know how true that is. I can imagine if it happened it would be true, but I don't know how hard it would be to bend a frame. You'd have to crash pretty hard, and I suspect if you had a bike with a subframe, you're going to do some damage to that bike as well. I don't really know how much the solid frame is going to affect the riding, other than it's going to be a little bit more rigid. Another little beef people have is with the suspension, and I hate to talk negative about this bike because I really like it. I like the look of it, and this is not a negative for me. So it has a KYB suspension and there's no adjustment to it. You can have a little bit of adjustment in the preload in the rear shock, but other than that, you're going to just use what you get. But guess what? There's another bike that has the same suspension. It's been out for a year. People love this bike, and they say that it is really good off-road, and that's the Himalayan 450. So the KYB suspension doesn't upset me. Sure, you'd like to be able to tweak it a little bit, but with everything you do like that, it's going to cause the price to increase. Here's one I do have a little bit of an issue with, and that's the ground clearance. It's 6.8 inches, which is the lowest in class. And so, you know, I've seen some video of it. Take a look at this video here. Here's an average size rider, probably 180 pounds, going over an average size jump, and that skid plate is brushing the ground. And you put a guy that's 20 pounds heavier on it like me, and it's gonna hit the ground. Now, the suspension is 8.3 inches of travel, and that's the front. The rear is very similar. And so, you know, I know there's the rake in the front, and that's gonna change this just a little bit, but you do the math, and that frame is going to bottom out way before the shocks are ever going to bottom out. So you can't really use the full suspension. But again, Kawasaki didn't make this for guys jumping the bike. It's made for those weekend warriors that want to go out, just get on a little bit of dirt, a little bit of gravel, and for the rest of the week they're commuting to work, they're on the highway. Fortunately, we have a lot of different bikes in this category. Unfortunately, the thing that separates them is some of the negative things. And another one that this bike has is it's got tube tires. And there's really no reason for that. It's not a dedicated off-road bike, and I see why some guys want to use tube tires when they're riding off-road, but again, we're talking 70-30 bike here. There's no reason for tube tires on this bike. Most people really enjoy the comfort and the ease of mind to have a tubeless tire. They're a whole lot easier to change when you get a flat. I'm about ready to go buy a brand new ADV bike with tubeless tires. I'm this close. And I just think it would have been nice if this bike would have had tubeless tires, or at least offer an option, kind of like the Himalayan. For about $300 to $400 more, you can go from a tube tire to a tubeless tire model. And I think Kawasaki made a mistake here, and maybe they'll correct it in the next year. Let's talk about something that Kawasaki got right on this bike, and I wish other manufacturers would as well, and that's the seat. You can buy two different types of seats. You can get the standard seat for the rider, standard for the pillion, or you can get a lower rider seat and a lower pillion seat, and you can mix and match those. And so you can imagine if you do some off-road riding, and if you like more of an enduro feel or motocross flat seat, you do the standard height on the rider and you do the low height on the pillion, and now you've got a flat surface which is easy to move around and get on and off the bike. So I think that's very creative on their end. I know the Himalayan has a little bit of adjustment in seat height, and most models nowadays you can buy a different one, but I'm glad to see that some of these rider comforts have come along and are starting to find their ways onto our bikes. Another thing that seat option can do is get you in a better rider triangle, and I know Kawasaki talks that it's got a good rider triangle, and really when it comes to motorcycles we don't know till we get on them and ride them. I'm not saying anybody's wrong by telling us that, because they do test these bikes on an average size person. We're just not all average size. Having ability to change the seat height is just a little bit more fine control over that rider triangle. Moving on to tech, the base model is going to have an LCD screen, and it does everything, says everything that you need as a rider. But if you want a little bit more technology and you get the SE model, you're going to get a 4.3-inch TFT screen that connects to Kawasaki's app called Rideology, which basically that takes your smartphone and mirrors it onto your display screen. So you get a lot more options there. So one thing I'm not seeing in technology with the new Kawasaki is some different ride modes. And I know some of you don't like those, but I've used them and I really appreciate them. And they've saved me a few times, especially the traction control, the gravel control. So I think it was probably to keep the price down. You can't do everything to these bikes and still keep it within the consumer's price range. But maybe future models will have a little bit more control and rider control features. One thing I appreciate Kawasaki doing is they've come out with a lot of accessories for this bike. You can get some fog lamps, you can get some engine guards, you can even get luggage. So there's about 8 or 9 different things that they've come out with that you can purchase for this bike, which lets me know that they're in this bike for a while and that they're going to probably continue this bike for several years. Now the DRZ4S, I can tell you there's only about 2 or 3 things available. We're still waiting on products for that bike. So for a manufacturer to go ahead and establish a good set of accessories means that the bike's going to be here for a while and there's going to be good support for it. Let's take a look at the specs and do a little bit of comparison to the bikes that it's competition in this market and kind of point out some differences that we see. Here we have the 3 closest competitors to the new KLE500. I chose the SE model for comparison because really it's the better value considering what you get for the extra $900. Let's start with the engine. I can't say that a twin-cylinder engine is better than a single-cylinder because we have top bikes here from each class. If you prefer smooth, quiet power, a twin might be better. But if you like the feel and the sound of a more traditional off-road bike, then the single-cylinder thumper might be what you want. Horsepower, again, we said this is unknown with the KLE, although I think it will be probably in the mid-40s. It should be very comparable to the other bikes. Seat height's fairly similar, with the KLE being the second tallest bike next to the KTM 390, which has a seat height of 34.2 inches. Ground clearance is what really suffers for the KLE. It's just 6.8 inches. It's almost 2 inches lower than the next closest competitor, the Ibex, at 8.7 inches, and almost 3 inches to the class-leading KTM 390. Weight is another unknown for the KLE. If I were to take a guess, I think it's probably going to be around 400 pounds. The Hemi's still going to be the heaviest, I think, at 432 pounds. So the wheel size is split. 2 bikes with 17-inch, 2 bikes with 18-inch. The good thing is that all 4 of these bikes have a 21-inch front wheel, which seems to work better off-road. All these bikes have very similar front suspension travel, except the KTM 390, which has 9 inches of travel. The fact that KLE doesn't have fully adjustable suspension, it can be seen as a negative considering its price point. Next up, tube versus tubeless. I doubt the KLE compares to the KTM 390 and warrants tube tires, but Kawasaki made this bike with tube wheels, so overall I think this may be something that keeps some buyers away. The other two models, which I'd say are more road friendly and similar to the KLE, both have tubeless tires, or at least the option to have tubeless tires. So I saved the price category for last. The first thing I notice is the KLE has the second highest price, just $200 under the KTM 390. I guess the most striking thing is that it sits $1,000 more than the CFMoto Ibex 450. It's hard to justify that price when the Ibex 450 beats the KLE in almost every category. The reason I chose the Ibex 450 to compare to the KLE is because it's its closest competitor based on the features that it has. Now the KLE is $1,000 more than the Ibex 450, and there's nothing on paper that the Kawasaki wins over the CFMoto. But here's the thing, when you look away from the spec sheet, the Kawasaki makes up the difference with a more modern and aggressive rally bike look. And the biggest difference I see, you get a Japanese manufacturer that's been known for its reliable motorcycles, and CFMoto is still somewhat of an unknown. Add to that, every medium or larger city is going to have a Kawasaki dealership. Hey, some final thoughts. I think that Kawasaki has done an excellent job bringing us this model, bringing it to market. It's a good comparison to some of the other small ADV bikes we have. Is it a purchase I'm going to make in the next year? Probably not. For me, I'm not in the market right now. I might be in a year or two once I transition more from off-road to on-road again. Right now I've got the DRZ that does about a 50-50 really well, but if I'm going to head to more of a long-distance touring type bike, I like the small bike, the small ADV bike, and this Kawasaki bike really fits everything I would look for. So I would compare it to the 450 Himalayan, the CFMoto, the KTM 390 even. So yeah, it's definitely a player that you have to consider when you're looking at these small ADV bikes. I think they've done a good job at giving us a bike that we have to truly think about as a competitor for these other models. So let me know what you think about this bike. Leave some comments down below. What's good, what's bad. I know we've kind of hit some negative things about this bike, but that's kind of what these videos do. There's a lot of positive things that we see, and we know what those are, but we have to point out some of the negatives that compare it to the other bikes. But all in all, I think this is a really good entry-level bike for a lot of people. And stay tuned, we're gonna have a little fun with Name That Lick. I'm gonna give you a guitar lick, and then the first 5 of you that identify which song that guitar lick is in, you're gonna get a Skitch on Wheels sticker. So just put it down in the comments which song this guitar lick comes from. So let's go have a look. Here we are at the latest Name That Lick. Now this is a song from 1981, pretty popular at the time, and this is the intro lick. It's pretty easy, I think. I think you all get it. Alright, thanks for watching the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.